Trouble is a 2002 American neo-noir crime comedy film directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, with a ensemble cast starring Tim Allen, Rene Russo, Dennis Farina, Tom Sizemore, Janine Garofalo, Jason Lee, Stanley Tucci, Ben Foster, Zoe Deschanel, Omar Epps, Sofia Vergara, Johnny Knoxville, Patrick Warburton, Andy Richter, DJ Qualls, Dwight Arrington Myers, and Martha Stewart.
100% confidence.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Cult of Films. I have to say that when these things are fresh, they are impossible to beat. So, I'm John the host. These are
I like the honey barbecue ones the best.
Those give me diarrhea, so I just stuck with original tonight.
That just means you had a good meal there, John.
Chris from Bad Movie Night, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Joe,
as always.
As always, yeah. Jason, this was your film that I asked you what you wanted to talk about for this guest spot on the Cult of Films, and
you already did all the other movies I wanted to do with somebody else before I could. So can we do High Fidelity? Well, no. Idiocracy? No. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
this is far from my last choice, though. This is super, super underrated, if you ask me. Kind of flew under the radar a little bit, unfortunately.
All right. Well, let's before we get into that, this was kind of a Kansas City shuffle because I asked you what you wanted to talk about. You said Big Trouble, so my brain automatically assumed we were going to talk about Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, penis noses, Nothing But Trouble. So then I popped over on the Twitters to the Chris, and I'm like, hey, dude, you want to talk about... I still think I put Big Trouble, thinking that it was Nothing But Trouble, and you thought it was something else entirely.
Yeah, I thought you wanted to talk about Big Trouble in Little China, so I immediately said yes. I didn't know.
Like John would call it Big Trouble, like he's on a first name basis.
Well, it's probably my fault because I probably
you wouldn't review Escape.
I would say yes.
Had you not seen this then? Was this?
No, I don't even think I've heard of this movie.
Yeah, both of you, because John's like, "Oh, Chris is in. He loves that movie." And I was like, "Well, shit! Finally, another person."
Yeah, let me explain my depression that existed like 10 seconds after he said Big Trouble, and I looked it up and it had Tim Allen, and that was the only thing I saw about this movie, and I was like, oh, shit.
But little did you know, it was Snatch 2 American Bomaloo. So
yeah,
what were your initial thoughts on Big Trouble 2002?
Probably not as high as Jason's on this. Sounds like he's a big fan. I don't know. I guess to me, like, the movie is so convoluted and so many characters that I just kind of find it hard to get attached to anyone. And it's kind of like the humor to me is with taking two random characters and putting them in like this absurd situation and then kind of stepping back and being like, isn't that funny? And sometimes it was, and sometimes it wasn't. And I kind of blame that on such a huge cast and some of them working well together and some of them not. And Tim Allen doesn't really work for me in this movie. Galaxy Quest he worked for me in, but that's pretty much it.
He wasn't Tim Allen in this movie, though. He was Dave Barry.
He was okay. He definitely felt that. Yes, he wasn't Tim Allen, Last Man Standing, Home Improvement kind of thing. But I will say, like, the movie is so brisk. It's so fast paced. Like, I wasn't bored.
Right.
But I don't think this is one that I'll remember.
How dare you,
Jason? How the hell did you find this film?
I don't know. Like, I feel like there were a bunch of like PG-13 comedies from between like 2000 and 2010 that I like ask people about. They haven't seen any of them. People like, what do you want to watch, Jason? I'm like, how about Big Trouble? They're like, no. I'm like, Envy? And they're like, no. I'm like, Eulogy? No. Screwed? No. Okay, what have you seen? Like, there was just nobody wanted to see PG-13 comedies like in the decade between 2000 and 2010. Unless it had somebody from SNL in it. Like, if it wasn't, like, Night of the Roxbury or something, like, no one really gave a shit, unfortunately. Like, there were some really good comedies that came out in that period. But, like, nobody saw, like, Office Space. Nobody saw, like, Half Baked, you know? Dirty Work.
Do you compare those two movies to this? I mean, those are R-rated, for one.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like... Nobody like saw that shit until much later. Dirty Work's rated PG-13.
Yeah, Dirty Work is. You're right. But I don't. The humor is so different in Dirty Work, in Office Space, to something like this. Like, to me, this movie would really work for my dad, but it just doesn't have the bite or something to really work for me. Like, I chuckled here and there at a few moments, but I never was like at all like in this comedic feeling at all. Like, Office Space sucks me in, and I'm like, there's a smile across my face the entire movie, whether I'm laughing out loud or not.
First off, I think that this is one of the cases where the story surrounding the movie might be at least just as interesting, if not more interesting, than the actual film itself. Because this was supposed to be released in November of 2001, and the studio was like, "Oh shit, we have a
bomb on an airplane."
Arrest me? You assaulted an airline.
What if I was
employee?
in the
That's a
military and I was a
federal offense.
bombardier?
Right there,
Bomb,
I'll
bomb,
get
bomb,
enough
bomb,
to
bomb,
put you
bomb,
away
bomb,
for a few
bomb,
years.
bomb.
The studio was just like, "Oh shit," and that was after they like poured multi-millions into the marketing for this film because it had such a monster cast. It's huge. And Sonnenfeld, the director of Barry Sonnenfeld, he had big films. Like, he did Men in Black, the whole Men in Black series except the newest one. Get Shorty made a ton of money. So it had all these things attached to it that should have made a ton of money. It was just really a victim of circumstance. So they dumped this thing like early or like mid 2002 and like would not market it. Yeah, just the graveyard.
They just buried it in April, and like it didn't totally suck ass at the box office either, despite being just like dumped. It had a $3.5 million opening weekend, but worldwide it didn't make back like a quarter of its budget.
Do we know what the budget was on this?
40 mil.
40 mil. Okay.
40 mil made
especially for a comedy like that.
8.5. So I mean, it was definitely a financial failure. Not as bad as it probably could have been, but still, I don't know. I think you could really see Sonnenfeld's influences in this because he started as a DP shooting like the greatest like Coen brother films, like the classics. Like he did Miller's Crossing and Raising Arizona and like all these. So he
was a DP on Blood Simple. He was there from like the very beginning.
The very beginning of
and then he produced some of their worst movies. The guy who co-wrote this movie did the script for Intolerable Cruelty.
Okay.
Which was easily the Coen brothers' worst movie.
And more about the character of who Tim Allen's supposed to be playing. He's a columnist.
Yeah. So I actually didn't know it was Dave Barry coming into it. And when he said he worked at the Miami Herald, my ears perked up. Because that's where Dave Barry and Gene Weingarten both wrote for the Miami Herald, like in the 90s. And like my newspaper would pick up Dave Barry's column, so I would always read it. And then like he had books. Like Dave Barry's Bad Song Book is one of the funniest books I ever read. And the other guy that works at the Miami Herald, Gene Weingarten, wrote a book called The Hypochondriac's Guide to Life and Death, which is fucking hilarious. So as soon as I saw this was at the Miami Herald, I was like, is this Dave Barry's story? And then when he said his name was Elliot Arnold, which is like one letter off DB, I was like, oh yeah, for sure. This is like a thinly disguised, like Dave Barry, like what if I put myself in this adventure type deal. So Tim Allen wasn't Tim Allen in this movie, and he's always Tim Allen. So like I appreciated that Tim Allen wasn't Tim Allen for sure.
And the thing is that if you don't like Tim Allen, then really the cast is so vast that you only have to deal with him for a good like 10 minutes of screen time.
He gets as much screen time as Andy Richter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is. This is like Chris said. This is so brisk, so like blink and you'll miss it. Like it is. Like I was actually, and for comedies, I'm not like I don't want to draw it out. I don't need a 2-hour comedy, but this one I could have stood for another 20-25 minutes because I think there was so many people, so many stories that I could have gotten some more, like some more character development from like Janine Garofalo and Patrick Warburton. I think their dynamic was pretty funny. Like if you don't like anyone in this, and there's plenty of, it's like night and day, some of them. Like I think Zooey Deschanel was like a standout, but then like Johnny Knoxville was borderline, fucking unwatchable whenever he was on the screen. So, but the glory of it is it all worked in the stew.
But he sucks, so like, nobody can be surprised Johnny Knoxville sucked. A lot of what you picked up on was stuff that Barry Sonnenfeld, like if you watch with director commentary, he said all this shit. he said he always fights with his editors because they want to make the movie longer, and he's like, no, you must make the movie shorter. Like, if this had been 65 minutes, Barry Sonnenfeld would have been like ecstatic. So the ending was completely reshot. So they had to spend quite a bit of money on reshooting the whole ending. And he was like, instead of just, because Dave Barry's ending that he wrote was sort of like, well, here's the recap. I'm working at the ad agency again. I got this sweet looking gal. The end. He's like, I think I want to see what happens to all the characters after. So they shot the new ending with like the wrap up where everyone kind of took a bow at the end, which I think was good. But like, I don't know, Barry Sonnenfeld gets in trouble a lot for going over budget. Like, that's why The Tick lasted like 4 episodes before it got canceled. You know, he likes to go over budget, but he also likes to shoot a bunch of shit and then cut it. So, you know, that's sort of his thing. So the pacing, the fact that like it was rapid fire with the jokes, and the fact that like it felt a little short, that was all stuff that he addressed in the audio commentary. So it's really interesting that you picked up on all of that.
Chris, did you like movies like 2 Days in the Valley, Fargo, The Ref, and stuff? Because I got major vibes from that. Like the Fargo, obviously, because of, I think there was a lot of homages paid to his influences, but like those kind of silly, almost, and I guess you could throw the chase in there too. Those like almost 90s, early 2000 like hostage films. That was like a weird subgenre of a subgenre for a while. Did you like those?
I mean, I like Fargo. I don't know. I don't seek out comedies. The classics, like we talked about, like when I was growing up, Office Space and stuff like that, are like staples for me. But this movie's comedy certainly, to me, feels of a time that just doesn't resonate really anymore for me. And
9/11 changed everything.
9/11 changed everything. I mean, that's really unfortunate for this movie. But back to your thing about like trimming the fat down from the movie and cutting it as much as possible. Like, I think that's probably a pretty good philosophy for a lot of movies. But because there's so many characters, it feels like characters do things that are forced because there's no time given to them to develop them in any way. Tim Allen and Rene Russo, they look at each other and it's like there's no chemistry there, but the next scene they're automatically together. It's like people ending up and it's kind of frustrating because it totally feels like the wave of the magic hand behind the curtain saying this is why this is now and this is why this is now. There's no like reasoning or like natural flow to what's happening to me in this movie.
That's fair.
And you could say it's like absurd because it's supposed to be, because it's a comedy, so it's not supposed to be in normal sense. But
I want to know the hallucinogenic Toad's backstory. You know, what's his motivation?
Well, he's really
people
Martha
in the
Stewart.
face with
he just
venom.
got out of prison, so
I would have been 100% okay with 75% of the time. You know, half the characters you get little moments and it adds up to this little arc or whatever. But like, you start out with Tim Allen and the voiceover, and he's the main character for 10 minutes of the movie, and then you kind of lose him, and he shows up here and there. I just wanted one character to carry me through the whole thing, and he has an arc, but it's so loose and so little developed in this movie.
Counterpoint, Tim Allen sucks.
Of course Tim Allen sucks, unless he's in Galaxy Quest. I fucking love that movie, and he fit it perfectly, I think.
yeah, it felt like a Tim Allen like fever dream, like the whole story. He's just like,
He thought he was like cool, and he's not.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick the screen of my boss in the thing. Then I'm gonna drive my Geo home, and then I'm gonna make out with Rene Russo, and then call my son an asshole. Or the choppiness of it. But I kind of forgive the overall story arc because who gives a shit? Just a vehicle for gags and jokes. I think this succeeded on because I think it had casted the right people for the time to do that. Like I was writing down gags in this where I'm like, oh, I really like this, or I really like this joke, and I do have some that I want to point out, but then I had to stop because like literally it's every scene, it's just like it's just there to make you laugh, and it's just like the plot's the backdrop, and that's okay for a movie like this.
So would it change your opinion of the film if I told you that Stanley Tucci was the main character? Because he's the only one not paired up. Everybody's paired up but Stanley Tucci, and he steals every scene he's in.
He gets a
he's
the toe sucking.
He's the one that drives the plot forward. Like Elliot Arnold just sort of bumbles his way through the movie, but Stanley Tucci's character is the one that completely drives the plot. So if you look at it from his POV, like he gets himself into a jam and then he gets himself out of a jam, and then like all these other people come around and like fuck his whole life up and steal his wife. Like, if you look at it from the point of the view that he's the main character because he is the most important, like I think it's more interesting to view it through that lens.
The movie ends on him, like a shot of him, right?
I mean, that would be an interesting way to go back and watch it now. Because you're right. I mean, if you're saying that makes for a better experience, it certainly doesn't push you in that direction, though. Like, it wants you to be with Tim Allen, right?
I think just because the book that it's based on was written, and they kind of just said, we like aspects of this. And Dave Barry like co-wrote the screenplay, but very much Barry Sonnenfeld will be like, does anybody have an idea for something funny to say? And if Patrick Warburton like makes a face that's funny, they're like, we'll cut 3 fucking lines of dialogue to fit this in. We do not care. Like, so, like the plot served the jokes rather than the other way around.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I guess. I get. To me, the jokes were more of like, look at this absurd situation, as opposed to, here's a joke. Like, I think the absurd situation is a good setup. I was just waiting for punchlines in these things.
See, the perfect example, one of my favorite scenes of the movie is Dennis Farina sitting there with his boss, like the person that hired him, and then he's just trying to eat the steak because he's already pissed off that it's like not working.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good scene.
And then the fucking cigar smoking, he just goes over, he's just like, you know, asking so nicely. It's not a rule if I come over and fart on your entree, but I'm not gonna do that. I don't know. It's just like that was the character development, I guess. You know, it told the jokes told you everything you need to know about the people. Like, I know that Dennis Farina is extremely upset that he is just like he
didn't like Miami. Everything that happened to Dennis Farina in that movie was to annoy him. Yeah. Like the 2-foot payphone that he had to hunch over and use. Everything in the movie was like Dennis Farina he hated Miami so much that John subconsciously connected the dots. He's like, oh shit. At the airport, he should have said, yeah, don't go to Miami. Like, this is Snatch. It's just Dennis Farina playing the character from Snatch, but now he's in Miami and he's pissed off.
Yeah. Normally, like, movies like this, they either are a series of, like, vignette bits, like a Zucker Brothers, like an airplane or something. It's just, like, a series of things. But it had those, like the Dennis Farina scene, but it also had running jokes that it took time to build up and then pay off at the end, like the hallucinogenic toad. Like, it shoots the dog, so the dog just eats dirt for, like, 2 weeks, and then later on, it caps off as, like, that's one of the main focuses of the picture. I don't know. I like Patrick Warburton's whole arc is just, he's this, like, shitty beat cop, but then it's, like, about him discovering that he needs to be a male stripper at the end. I don't know. Like,
Patrick Warburton, they built a metal strip the length of that airport terminal so you could block out his dick. He's like, no, I'll turn my body. You need to see my ass.
I still want to get
they're like,
cast
all right,
in Disney
Patrick,
films.
we will spend $1 million tearing this metal strip down so we can see your ass crack if that's really what you want.
Slapstick stuff where Tom Sizemore and Johnny Knoxville, they rob the bar with, I guess, like, child leggings.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason why.
Well, you know what? Barry Sonnenfeld says, I hope nobody realizes that I just took this from Raising Arizona, John's favorite movie.
Oh, God. Well, it worked in this a fucking hell of a lot more than Raising Arizona, because when he's, like, asking for stuff and they just keep throwing it and it just keeps hitting him in the face, I was like, I never laugh at comedies, and this had me fucking belly laughing throughout. It did its job. Like, no comedies, I don't laugh at... I hysterically laughed till I cried at the end of Bumblebee last night because my family wanted to watch it, to where my family kicked me out of the room because it was so absurd and so stupid. But then, like, when it's trying...
The Transformers movie?
Yeah, oh, God. The ending, I was just, like, cracking up so loud. My wife's like, I can't watch movies with you. You're just too cool for everyone. I'm like, no, it's just so fucking stupid. And then, so I got jettisoned from family movie night. But, like, I will never laugh at comedy. And this had me laughing.
Imagine you were 15 when you saw this.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have gotten the jokes, though. I was a fucking idiot when I was 15.
See... This movie, I immediately go to, like, The Whole Nine Yards or, like, Rat Race. It's kind of where I, like, fit this in.
Really? Oh,
you didn't like
hated
Rat Race?
this.
You know, Rat Race was fine.
It's fine, yeah. Exactly, it's fine. And I think, you know, humor's so goddamn subjective. Like, everybody has different sense of humor. So like I think a lot of these jokes certainly work for some people. Didn't all work for me. But you know, back to that bar scene. It was good to see Tom Sizemore where he's like at least recognizable as like a human being and somewhat together. He's like simultaneously looks ripped in one sequence but also fat. I don't know how he does that. But it was good. He's both, yeah.
Like Tom Sizemore is his sex tape. Like it's simultaneously impressive and disgusting, you know? And that's Tom Sizemore. They'll put him in all kind of shit. They're like, we want you to play a scientist. Can you pronounce the word genome? Genome. Perfect. We're using that take. Hey, Tom Sizemore, fucking scientist. I know about the human genome. That's where they sent my ass to Mars. And you're like, all right. This is like the only time he's done a non-serious role too. Like Barry Sonnenfeld's like, Tom Sizemore had never done a comedy before. I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. So I went to IMDb. Sure enough, Sizemore's never done a comedy. And if you watch him, you're like, does Tom Sizemore act like he's in a comedy? He does not.
Right. I don't really think he has done a comedy. Yeah.
Why does him and Knoxville look so brown?
Because they were dirty.
Yeah, they were dirty, dude.
Was that an homage to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Another Coen Brothers film?
Or maybe Raising Arizona, because they look like they just tunneled out of prison.
Sure, yeah.
I was surprised when I saw a very young Ben Foster.
Yeah, that was before people thought Ben Foster could act.
No, because he was on 6 Feet Under before this.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah. He was a fairly major character in like season 3 and 4 of 6 Feet Under.
But yeah, who's that gal? It's Zooey Deschanel. I thought she was the funniest person with they gave her the best lines in this.
And she was so bored delivering them. This movie should also be subtitled Dave Barry Doesn't Like His Teenage Children.
That's kind of how Zooey Deschanel is though, right?
Yeah,
she
that's why
always seems so. Yeah, she was good. She was good in the role. I agree.
She's super like manic pixie dream girl, but in this, I guess she's that too. In this,
she's just like she acts bored, and you're like, I want her to like me. She thinks she's better than me. I must have her.
Right. The getting the daughter wet, little back and forth. I
chuckled at that as well.
Chuckling. He's just like, oh, you know, the mom got me, but then I went down on the daughter or something, and I was like, you bastards, you did it.
Andy Richter was a surprise as well. It's just like it was constant. But there's movies like that when you look back on like before people were ultra famous or more famous than they are, where you see their little cameos and stuff. And it's some of these movies just have an enormous amount of people that go on to be bigger. And I don't know, like was what's his face? Jason Lee, was he big at the time? I guess he probably was.
What was his
name? He was never big.
Jason Lee.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he was never huge. So this is him at his peak, I guess. My Name is Earl, I guess, was like...
Yeah, he was pretty...
Yeah, he's not like ultra famous, but like most people recognize him from something, I think.
He was the star of an NBC show for like 6 years.
Yeah. And Kevin James movies. Not Kevin James. Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith.
The ending is what I had the biggest problem with, which we already kind of went over, and you said that they reshot it. Yeah. But I wish, like in a better movie... this would have ended with the homage to Dr. Strangelove, because they literally did the Slim Pickens right in the nuke, and then you literally got the stock footage of black and white, you know, A-bomb going off, and that was great. And I for whatever reason I thought I'm like, oh, just go for it, and I thought like it was gonna set off something, and then the whole world was gonna blow up or something, and I was like, oh yeah, this little tiny, you know, like kidnapping movie just turned into an apocalyptic movie, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But of course Tim Allen had to have another chance to, you know, make out with Rene Russo, and I was like,
well, really that was the original ending, and they cut most of that because they're like, we don't need to focus on Tim Allen, he's barely in this movie. Because really everybody else in the movie did such a good job of making the case for themselves that like he just cut all the Tim Allen shit out of it. Because, you know, Dave Barry didn't write a book where he's not the main character, you know?
Right.
He wrote a book where it's very much focused around him and his exploits, and then every other pair of characters, because everybody paired up, if you notice, you know. Jack Keeler and Dennis Farina were real good. Johnny Knoxville and Tom Sizemore were, you know, funny.
We're there.
Yeah, DJ Qualls and Ben Foster were in this movie. Like, so they paired everybody up, which, you know, it worked because people just got to bounce jokes off of each other.
How great would it have been if Sonnenfeld just went for it, and instead of casting DJ Qualls, he just went Steve Buscemi as the high school friend?
Hello, fellow kids.
So you were talking about the end of the movie being disappointing, but I guess I don't quite understand why. Because it feels like, I mean, that's where the movie's going. You didn't really expect Tim Allen to die or anything. Like, I don't know.
It's disappointing the same way as Liar. Like, when Liar is over, it's in the courtroom, right? Like, that's when the movie really ends. Because that's when Jim Carrey stops being over the top and crazy and funny.
But it's based on a book. Anytime something's based on a book, there's an epilogue. And
True.
Sometimes they cut the epilogue, but like there's an epilogue in it.
But they cut half of the epilogue for the characters. You only got Johnny Knoxville found a new person in prison, and then
it was like half the people.
Yeah, no one, and I guess Rene Russo and Tim Allen get married, or like she gets divorced from the guy, and the guy's still tripping balls from the toad juice, and then that's it. Like, no one else got it. Like, we don't find out what happened.
No, you saw Dennis Farina and Jack Keeler on the plane with all the fucking Florida Gators fans.
Okay.
Where he looked like he wanted to blow his brains out.
What happened to
no
Boogie?
one cares. DJ Qualls already left because he was like triple booked because he made 3 other movies that year.
The new guy. And what the hell else did
Road
DJ
Trip?
Qualls?
He was in the Core.
The Core.
Yeah, he was in Road Trip. Yeah, that was like peak DJ Qualls.
As soon as I saw DJ Qualls, I'm like, fucking Jason, you have a thing with him in movies.
I don't think that's true necessarily. What other DJ Qualls movie did I make you watch?
You've talked about him on more than one occasion.
Oh, yeah, because he's an enigma. Like, Jim Rash did Paul F. Tompkins' Speakeasy, and he talked about TV ugly, you know? Like, Jim Rash is not a bad-looking guy, but he's, like, right up at the edge for as weird-looking as you can be on TV. And then somebody like Jason Schwartzman or DJ Qualls comes along, you're like, fuck. There was an edge the whole time. They're like, Breckin Meyer's the ugliest person we can have in this movie. And then DJ Qualls is like, hello! And you're like, oh, shit. He looks like everybody I went to high school with.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's fine when he's like, oh, I'm bad at sports or whatever. Jim Jeffries made a whole show where he played a guy in a wheelchair. But when DJ Qualls is just like a regular, just like, I have some friends and he's one of them. I don't know. I thought that was...
Yeah, he fits.
He's got a new guy about him like fucking a bunch of like good-looking women too or something.
Well, there are no bad-looking women in high school movies, so like, what choice did he have?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not his fault.
Like, a dude can be DJ. There's no female equivalent of DJ Qualls in any of these movies. In like the 90s.
Judy Greer.
Movies? No, how dare you, sir?
Judy Greer.
She does not compare to DJ Qualls.
Fern May. She's Fern May. She actually looks like DJ Qualls.
No. No. Let me look this up.
How dare you?
Look it up.
She mostly does voiceover now. I will say that. That doesn't mean John's right.
Yeah. Doesn't mean he's wrong either. Sandra Bernhard, we just talked about her, and see, that's the thing. Like, we talked about Hudson Hawk. I couldn't stand that movie, and it felt close to this, but this was, I don't know, it just felt like someone cared about the jokes in this.
You were wrong about Hudson Hawk too, so like, just take the L on that one.
Fucking Reddit told me about it too.
But you brought up Liar Liar, and a lot of, I guess the difference here is like that movie has a heart with its character. It's this journey where he changes who he is inside, right? He becomes a better person. And in this movie, I guess it's Tim Allen reconnects with his son in some way, but in only because he was a badass and stopped a nuclear explosion. But not because he really learned anything or his son learned anything.
His son learned that his dad wasn't a fucking loser. The whole movie, his son thought he was a loser.
I guess. I don't know. It felt...
Do you need that in your comedies? Do you need to learn something?
No. So I don't need that necessarily if the movie is extremely funny. But this wasn't extremely funny to me. I'm trying to think of like what would be. Like Office Space fucking has a heart though too, right?
Not really.
Well, it does.
A
but
guy goes to a magic hypnotist and he doesn't give a shit, and then like 2/3 of the way through the movie he gives a shit again, but like they never address why. And then
he gives a shit like, because of Jennifer Aniston. He decides what's actually important to him.
How is that's the same that's the same arc as Tim Allen in this, because he is like,
it is.
Yeah, she cheats on his wife cheats on him, so he's like, I'm a fucking loser. I don't even belong in my job anymore. I'm gonna get the shittiest car. It takes his son, calling him a loser, and Janae Russo, Renee Russo's sister, to screw him in the office for him to be like, oh, I can gain my gumption back and go stop a nuclear holocaust on an airplane.
And Ron Livingston never does anything heroic. He just steals from his job.
No,
like that's his arc. He's like, I'm unsatisfied at my job, but then I was okay being unsatisfied, and then I stole a bunch of money, and then that's it. Then I had a bunch of money. The end.
He did try to give it back.
He tried to give it back because he had a change of heart. And the whole movie rides that typical storyline of like getting together with somebody, falling in love, and then right before the end, they break up some reason, but the character changes and then they reconnect, right? And the reason that works is because they spend an hour and a half with those two characters almost, and a few other ones scattered throughout. This was 3 scenes. Here's Tim Allen, he's a loser. Next, he's banging this lady. Third, he saves everyone. It just was like bam, bam, bam. No time
Amazing.
spent developing any of that.
They shot it. I'm sure they shot it, but they're like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
Janine Garofalo is gonna like see Dennis Farina's gun and then not care. Like, we need that in the movie. We have no time for Tim Allen to, because you can almost write the scenes that were cut. You know what they were. There's like a scene with him and his son eating breakfast, and his son's like, you're a fucking loser, and he's like, but I'm not. I'm cool.
Yeah.
And then he'll say something dated, and his son will be like, nobody says that anymore, Dad. Ugh.
Makes a Tool Time reference. Winks at the camera. Yeah.
Like, that scene was in the movie and cut because Barry Sonnenfeld's like, people want to see tits. So, like...
Well, let me ask you this. Because do you think these situations where they pair these two characters off each other, was that improv, the comedy? Because to me, it felt very written.
Part of it. I think if they had a better idea, they would do it.
Yeah. Okay.
If they had a better idea, they would, like, write it. It wasn't, like, improvise. They didn't, like... improvise something, but they would show up on set one day and be like, wouldn't it be funny if this happened? And then they would just shoot the scene that way. Yeah. If you listen to the director commentary, which I keep harping on, like, very much he's like, oh, well, Warburton had this idea to do that, or, something like that. So it seemed written because they were like, oh, let's get a page on that. And they would have somebody punch up some dialogue for it. They didn't like improvise it, but like they were comfortable going to Sonnenfeld. Like, look, man, I think it'd be funnier if my character did this. So it's both. It's like a hybrid approach, right? Where it didn't feel improvisational, but at the same time, like, things were loose enough on set that he's like, I don't give a shit that Dave Barry wrote this script. Like, have our intern bang out some dialogue. So yeah. I think that they felt comfortable doing that was good.
Could you imagine being him directing this movie and this huge cast? Like, if you shut these people down, these actors down, and be like, no, you can't try that. Do these lines. They're not going to pull off comedy lines with like a negative attitude. Do you know what I mean? You really have to sell it.
He seemed really annoyed because like the two things he brought up multiple times in the commentary was like, oh, this person has to use the bathroom during this shot. And I was like, no. And then I had to sit in a seat on a plane for 3 hours having to piss, and I didn't care. Being a director is just telling people they can't use the bathroom. That's your whole job as a director. And then the other thing he said is like, when it's an ensemble cast, everybody feels like somebody else is the lead in the movie, so they don't give a shit. Like, Janine Garofalo had 2 weeks off, so she came back with a tan. He's like, you can't have a fucking tan, you idiot. So they had to like put makeup on her to make her look less tan, because she's just like, yeah, I'm in Miami for 2 weeks. And they're like, we don't need you. We need you to shoot like this scene, and then we need you to come back in 2 weeks. So she's like, fuck it, I went to the beach, which, really? Janine Garofalo? But whatever. So he was like, nobody has any sense of ownership. He said like DJ Qualls and Ben Foster were partying every night. And it's like, you're in a movie. And they're like, yeah, but it's not my movie. I just show up and say 2 lines and then I'm done. So everybody felt like it was somebody else's movie. And he said that was a problem too. Was, when you shoot an ensemble cast, everyone's like, I'm the funny guy. I'm not the lead. I'm the comedic relief. But everybody was the comedic relief.
I just always think about Mystery Men with this large of an ensemble cast of comedians, but the guy that directed that was a straight up nobody, so they just ran over him and half the movie was improv.
This was his only movie. He just showed up, gifted us Mystery Men. He's like, I'm going back to commercials.
The jokes came off a little more polished in this, which sometimes felt a little more scripted, for better or worse. But, again, like you guys said, where it's just like, those scenes that were cut, like the dumb exposition scene at the breakfast table that we all knew was probably in there. But good, that's gone, because it made way for the pilot that can't remember what flight he's on. And I can't, be happier about that, because it was a great gag. It was just like...
This could have been a 97-minute movie with all that shit in it, and, I don't know.
This could have been a series of YouTube videos. I don't know. The story just did not matter. This was a day in the life of nobody, and they just happened to be interconnected, and it was just ridiculous, and it worked.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. What you're like, it could be a series of YouTube videos where it's just funny situations. But that's not going to leave me positive feelings. It's going to be so passive. I've seen it. It's done, immediately forgotten, because the heart is what brings me back to something, makes me connect.
Okay.
So I can chuckle and watch this and wasn't bored. Wasn't bored at all. But it leaves no lasting
If you saw this
feelings.
movie when you were 15 and you saw Liar Liar yesterday, you'd have the complete opposite reaction. You'd be like, Liar Liar should have had heart like Big Trouble. You're just 100% an old jaded fuck now, and you saw this movie this week.
Do you think so?
No, that's how I feel about Hudson Hawk, because like I said,
You're an old jaded fuck and you saw Hudson Hawk a month ago.
I don't know, man, though, but
Hudson Hawk,
Shaun of the Dead and stuff, those movies have really a strong heart as well. Yeah, really smart. Yeah, really clever, but also an emotional movie with drama.
It's unfair to put things up like this against Shaun of the Dead, because Shaun of the Dead is one of the tent poles. That's a lightning in the bottle type of film. That's like a Scott Pilgrim. It's just everything worked out and they just hit it out of the park. No matter, if you watch that when you're 2 years old or 90 years old, it's going to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
This, like you said, this is a comedy of its time. But there was a lot of comedies of its time around this time, and most of them weren't funny. And this one made me laugh, and the other ones didn't.
This was early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was right after 9/11, which was when nobody saw this.
I'm thinking of what was that Jack Black movie with the guy from American Pie?
Shallow Hal?
No.
That was George Costanza was in Shallow Hal with him.
What the hell is it called? He was
Saving Silverman?
Saving Silverman.
Ah, there.
Steve Zahn was in that. Harley Emery and Amanda Peet, I think. Yeah.
Amanda Peet, yeah. Mean Girls. Those are the kind of movies that I remember when I was 15, maybe.
Mean Girls was 2006, 2005.
Is it? God damn, I'm fucking old. 2004.
Jawbreaker was around that time.
Do you get a kickback every time you mention Jawbreaker on this show?
Darren Stein
Do you get a
watches
check
the
for
show.
$11 every time you mention Jawbreaker?
Don't worry about it. I got you, Darren.
White Castle. Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. I remember laughing quite a bit when I was younger at that movie, and that's kind of a similar situation.
Marijuana was in your brain,
but that was Wet Hot American Summer with a better script.
But it was funny. Every scene was pretty funny.
Yes.
But it didn't have that emotional thing I was talking about. It was just straight up comedy, no thrills or anything like that. And that worked better for me. So maybe it's just the sensibilities. I don't know.
You need a rated R comedy. That's what I'm hearing.
I think that's what I needed. Yeah, you know what? You're probably right. Because it's some of the jokes felt neutered. I don't know.
9/11 happened and everyone's like, we're too cool for school now. It changed everything. I'm playing 9/11 for a seismic shift in cinema. You couldn't have made American Beauty post 9/11. Couldn't have done it.
And it took 15 years or something to make Man of Steel, where Man of Steel, it's just literally 9/11 but a superhero. It's Superman destroying, New York and all that shit. Everyone craves the dark and depraved and horrible now.
It all goes in waves.
Yeah. So.
It's all tied to the economy. We are in a zombie movie economy right now. When Obama was president, everybody wanted vampire shit, Because like, oh fuck, the Dow's up, we're gonna live forever. And then I was like, no one has healthcare. Fuck, just you know what? I have 7 figures in student loan debt. Bring on the zombies. I don't give a shit. Fannie Mae will leave me alone once some zombie goes in there and bites all their loan officers.
Freddie Mac will get you in the end, though.
And Big Trouble was the most vampire movie to ever vampire in the most zombie year of all time. And that's why they're like, yikes, this isn't going to work.
That toe sucking scene, though, I really didn't need to see that. Like,
dude, I've seen porns that were less explicit.
Don't kink shame.
I'm not shaming anything.
Like, they shot that a lot, and neither one of them wanted to shoot that scene. And then Barry Seidenfeld's like, that's good. You sucked each one of her toes. What if you look between her toes? And Stanley Tucci's like, fine, I'll do that. He wanted no part of it. And like every look on her face was like 100% like her actual revolt. She's like, well, it's my first movie role.
Was it actually her first movie role? She looked really, really young in that movie.
Probably first American movie.
No. Yeah, it's her first American movie role. She was on a television show in Mexico called Acapulco Cuerpo y Alma. And
one of my favorites.
Big Trouble was her first American role. So yeah, I was right.
Yeah, and then she's like, so I got to get my toes sucked by Stanley Tucci and then get hit on by Jason Lee? I'll go back to Telemundo.
But like, if Stanley Tucci had been like, it's a big scene today, like that probably would have been, but he's sort of like, I don't want to do this any more than you do. Let's just get this over with. And Sonnenfeld's like, no, let's do it again.
Is Stanley Tucci that good of an actor, though? Because he sold it.
Not anymore. I don't think so. Netflix owned him soon. The last crap I've seen him in. What was he in that post-apocalyptic movie?
Is he in like the weird like John Cusack, like John Travolta type?
No, he's not like that.
Okay.
I don't think he's quite that. I think he's still a good actor. I don't know. He was in some awful Netflix movie I watched. The Silence.
Is he licking toes in it?
Unfortunately, no. And maybe that's what was missing.
When the world is under attack from terrifying creatures who hunt their human prey by sound?
Yeah.
16-year-old Allie Andrews, who lost her hearing at 13 and her family seek refuge in a remote... He did a Kirkland Bird Box?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Watch that. It's on Netflix. And then go watch the 2018's Patient Zero, starring him and Natalie Dormer. That's one to check out.
I feel like I've actually heard of that one.
It is god-awful.
Whew. I mean, he was Merlin in a Transformers movie. I think that's when it turned for him. He did the Hunger Games shit. He was in that live-action Beauty and the Beast that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, he's like one of these people. Like, I don't want to say John Rhys Davies or Malcolm McDowell, who can be a good actor in good movies, but is also in some pretty fucking terrible stuff.
He's never
but like for 3 weeks work for $6 million, you just fucking do that,
you
right?
lick some toes. You get in there.
You just have to.
You lick some goddamn toes. And Stanley Tucci was 100% the best part of Big Trouble too. So like, yeah, even if he didn't want to lick a hot girl's toes because he's married, like he looked super into it. The guy's a fucking professional.
I know. Can we not feel too bad? It's not like he was licking Tom Sizemore's toes.
Yeah, it was.
I bet he would have. I bet he would have committed to it
in the prime. Yeah.
Oh my God! Can you imagine Tom Sizemore's toes? I don't want to think about that.
They're taking off those dirty flip flops.
They're drunk. It's just they taste like alcohol.
Maybe Knoxville's toes would have been worse though. He's probably stepping in weird shit and
probably all broken and yeah.
I bet his toes look like his dick.
I'm gonna think about that when I go to sleep.
Knoxville's dick is ruined from all the stunts they did where they just.
Are you serious?
I watch Hopkins.
Yeah, it looks like it was slammed in a car door. It's just like flat.
Oh my God.
Yeah, his dick is ruined. What's the point of being Johnny Knoxville if you can't get laid? He's like, hey, ladies, I want a show on MTV. And they're like, oh my God, Johnny Knoxville. We want to blow you. And then they're like, oh, what happened to it? It looks like it got run over by a car.
It's like a pool toy when you start inflating it. It's like...
Be the most famous guy in America. And they're like, all right.
I think there's an old Twilight Zone episode about that where he becomes the most famous. And...
Yeah.
I liked Dennis Farina in this movie quite a bit. Although he plays Dennis Farina.
Oh, yeah.
But he's so likable.
But no one is as good as Dennis Farina playing Dennis Farina as Dennis Farina.
Yeah.
He's great in this.
Miami, bad food, worse weather. Miami.
Andy Richter was great. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that everyone, for the most part, besides Tim Allen, turned into pretty good. Martha Stewart was just Oscar worthy in this.
Well, he like apparently got chummy with Martha Stewart. He's like, I want to put you in a movie, and she's like, cool. He's like, yeah, you're gonna play a dog.
That's it. That is our review for Big Trouble, not Big Trouble in Little China, not Nothing But Trouble, but Big Trouble. Probably the same amount of people will watch this review that watch the movie, because no one knows what the hell this movie is. But I have to say, thank you, Jason, for letting me, or for enlightening me on this one. This one was fun.
I'll do it again. We'll do Envy next.
Chris, defer. Ruppert from Bad Movie Night.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. This was a good time. It was worth checking out.
Good.
It also reminded me that I need to go back and watch Galaxy Quest,
which I've never seen.
Get the fuck out of here, John. What the fuck? Go watch Galaxy Quest.
That's our next goddamn movie. Is Galaxy Quest.
Yeah. I only watch like weirdo movies. I don't watch You
only watch movies with toe sucking in them.
Dude.
It's a thing.
I was never a foot guy until I saw Stanley Tucci's little rat face.
Hey, consenting adults, whatever.
Dude, yeah. I own this house.
Every
I want
Quentin Tarantino movie, you act like this was the line.
Yeah, man. All right. What do you got going on besides talking about, the perils of Gwendolyn?
Oh, I don't know. We got stuff every day, every other day. So go to Bad Movie Night. Check us out. The number 2 best movie review site on YouTube.
Is that
right there behind They Said We Said?
Oh shit. Well, no. Jason from
John thought you just got 40 million subscribers over the last couple of weeks.
We're working on it too.
I went
it's
from
half in the bag. Then you guys, Jesus.
6 from 3 to clock. 3 to clock. Wow, those. I'm drinking Hazelicious tonight, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of them. Jason from Film Hooligans and Brainstorm Brewery. What are you up to?
Oh, just living life. Can't complain. Sometimes I still do. If you are interested in my dumb opinions about other stuff, go to the Twitter. I'm at Jason Ealt on the Twitter. You can see my pin post where I have links to all the other different projects I work on around the internet.
Perfect. I am John the Host. You can find me at John the Host. You could also follow this very podcast, whatever this is, this show that we present to you.
The vodcast.
This vodcast, Vomitcast. You could go to at the Cult of Films, all lowercase. I'll be uploading this to the podcasting sites also. Thank you for liking the video and sharing it with all your friends. Let everyone know about Big Trouble, because no one saw this film, and maybe some people and some people's fathers, according to Chris, should